Hello, welcome. This is going to be both on my Substack and an episode of Current Wave. I'm going to get it out on Substack right away just so that it's there, and then the Current Wave process takes a little longer. So I was doing a Ask Me Anything on my Instagram, and I got a really good question, and I started to think about that question and realized that I have a lot to say on the matter. And so I wanted to just do it in a way that was going to be easier than a bunch of little stories on Instagram and would potentially reach more people. And really doing this because I think it will be helpful, and I hope it's helpful. And I think that it's important to have different perspectives right now and have a broader view of what's going on, even if we really don't know what's going on. So, to get more specific, the question is, say more about your optimism for the future. And then she's asking for Rex, which I'll get to. So, I do hold a lot of optimism right now, despite everything that's happening on this planet, which is super intense. It's real. It feels really real. We're looking at a lot of different things. It can be terrifying. And yet, I think that there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I want to bring in a few perspectives. So, I'm going to start really broadly and then zoom in more specifically. So, I think that from my perspective and from my view, I want to start with just like life on earth, humanity, this really, really big, broad view, because I think to think that we have any idea ultimately like what we're looking at, and when I say that, I mean life on earth, like what we're looking at, I think that that's a really interesting perspective to have. We really don't know so much. There's so much more unknown than known. And Elizabeth Gilbert said this on a podcast that I was really moved by with Tim Ferriss in the last fall. I'll link that because it's a really good one. And I think that her philosophy really resonates with mine. I hold a very similar philosophy to her about life on earth and being a human. And so she's saying like, to think that we really have any idea what this human experience is a hilarious idea in itself. I don't know that she uses the word hilarious, but that's the word that I'm going to use because I think that's true. I think that we really don't know what we're looking at. So I think that we're not even yet asking the right questions, especially from an assumption that we know what we're supposed to be doing, how this is supposed to look. I think those are ideas rooted in control. They're very like non-spiritual. So I want to zoom out. I want to start with that idea of like, okay, well, what is this anyway? And I don't think that we really have those answers. So I think that to really root ourselves in this moment, and for me, what has always been really supportive is that zooming out, is that broad scope, that big picture that really we don't have the possibility to fully imagine, but to create some sort of framework for ourselves from any sort of vantage point that resonates with you. You want it to really resonate because the point of zooming out ultimately is to give ourselves this broader context, this bigger scope of, okay, what's possible? Do we have any idea? And I want to bring in that parable that I'm sure you've heard at some point, that I also think frames this question of like, we don't know what the end is. We don't know where things are going. We don't really know what like good and bad ultimately are, or how they'll play out, even if they do exist in this realm, like how they'll play out, because we don't know the end. And so there's that parable that says that there's a farmer and he has a horse, and the horse runs away. And the neighbors say, "Oh my gosh, how terrible. What misfortune. Your horse ran away." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the horse returns and brings with it a herd of other horses. And the neighbors say, "Oh my gosh, what good fortune. You have all of these horses now." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then one of his sons breaks his leg trying to tame the horses. And the neighbors say, "Oh my gosh, what misfortune has befallen you? Your son's leg is broken." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then there's a war that breaks out. And so all of the young men are recruited, and the son can't go to war because he has a broken leg. And the neighbors say, "Oh my gosh, what good fortune." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And this just goes on and on. And I don't know that we know the end to that story. Until humanity no longer exists on Earth, and even past that, like, who's to say? And within that, we do experience life. We experience contrast. We experience horrible heartbreak and extreme joy and this wild ride of existence. And that is real because that is our experience. And so we're always playing with this framework of our own experience and what we can do with that, how we can cultivate that, how we can resource ourselves and give ourselves as much breathing room to experience what we're experiencing in our truth, and to also push our own edges of our capacity into something new. And so within that lens, like, human life is finite and delicate and so beautiful, and all humans are equal in their worth in my mind. Like, we are all here. No life is better than another. And yet we are living and dying, and we're each having this very wild experience. And I think that our souls really signed up for this lifetime before we arrived. We knew the cards we were being dealt, and we agreed to them in order to expand our soul's experience and capacity, and our soul, where our soul comes from is very vast. And in that space, there really is no contrast. It is like in this benevolent bed of a cosmic ping. It's what I call it. It's like this cosmic ping space of like this noise of existence and expansion and creation ringing out. And there is no contrast. So we come here to experience that. And it's really not fun a lot of the time from our vantage point as a human in this finite world where we're experiencing things that feel really intense and negative and things that feel really intense and positive. Our soul is like game for it all, because experiencing that contrast is how we grow. And we've had tons of lifetimes of that contrast, of living really short lives, living really long lives, living really hard lives, living really beautiful lives. So the one that we're here in right now, in the drop of our soul's experience, is very finite. And our soul kind of doesn't care to some extent, because our soul is deeply unconditional. Where it's being held is so held in this layer, in layers and layers and layers of love, that it's good. We're the ones that feel all of the feels, because we're dropped out of that space to come here and play in this wild world and wild web of experience. So if we're coming from that perspective, it really changes how we look at all of this. And that's not to diminish pain. It's not to say, like, oh, yeah, your brother has cancer. Okay, well, he came here to experience that. I don't want to say that flippantly. That's not how I mean it. I'm just coming at this from a really big, broad perspective that encompasses this really intense human experience. So that is like really zooming out, and then we're going to zoom closer in, closer in. And I do encourage you to explore big, broad perspectives that hold you. And there's so many different versions of what that looks like. It can be spiritually based, it cannot be. Like, atheism in itself is a big, broad perspective that holds people. So there's a lot of pathways to something more vast that you can settle into. Even just settling into the belief that the universe is ultimately benevolent and that we are held in love, by love, through love, and all creation is from love. That's one that might be hard to grasp. Maybe it feels easy to grasp for me, but there's a lot of different ways that you can cultivate that and look into that. And there's so many different paths, and that's what teachers teach. Another perspective I want to bring in is through the book Sapiens, a brief history of humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. So not every historian or not everyone agrees with this, but the idea of that book is that we are actually living in the most peaceful, prosperous time that humans have ever existed in since the beginning of our existence. And he really details this with a lot of study and a lot of evidence. So ultimately, like, there were times where there was so much famine, so much war, so much chaos, so much brutality in the human trajectory that his research really does show that we are living in the most peaceful, prosperous time. I do think we're living in the most prosperous time. Like, especially if you're living in the United States, especially if you're living in the Western world, compared to previous times in history, our needs are so beyond cared for. And that is not like true across the board. There are so many people deeply suffering, really like in poverty at the edge, and yet in comparison to so many times, and like, I'm not speaking about Gaza, like that is a horror of horrors right now, and there is extreme suffering on this earth, yet globally and at scale we are living in the most prosperous time. It's totally out of balance. Yes, there are people who are overly prosperous, and there are still so many people suffering. And so our work is to like endeavor in this vein and really show up for it, and for showing up for continuing to make this planet more peaceful and more prosperous. So I wanted to bring that in as well. And there's also this idea of like, okay, we are just seeing and experiencing so much information. It's information overload. We're seeing horrible things on social media all of the time, and those things are so intense. And in part, they're super real. And they're also the things that we see a lot of, because we're really fed a narrative of fear, doom, gloom, because keeping people scared and stuck is a really good way to control people. If your energy is low, if you're hopeless and overwhelmed rather than excited and empowered, you're going to stay home watching the news, feeling horrible, in this loop of overwhelm and doom and gloom and spiraling, and like there's no hope. So that is something that you see when you watch the news. Like, I really don't watch the news, but when I do, I'm always like, oh my gosh, like people are sitting there watching this all the time. No wonder people think that the world is a really dismal place, right? And not to say that the horrible things aren't happening. They are in certain places and certain moments. And like that brutality and cruelty and inhuman insanity is also present. But when we're seeing it, it feels like it's like this overwhelming force. So be mindful of like how much you're consuming, how much you're watching. And I'm going to come back to that. Also, A Course in Miracles, and I really, really admire A Course of Miracles and A Course in Miracles teachers like Marianne Williamson and Gabby Bernstein. Like, they are teachers of mine. Their work is something that I've been taking part of for the last, almost 20 years, which is really cool and really crazy. The first time I started reading Marianne Williamson's work, I was like in my teens, and like enough time has passed for me to have been studying this for a really long time. But A Course in Miracles says, the moment a problem arises, so does its solution. And I think that there are solutions to all of the problems that are happening right now. The challenging thing is that we've been really blocked from implementing those solutions by governments, by systems of oppression, by greed, by people who are blocking like real solutions to real problems, right? We produce enough food in the world to like feed everyone. We have so much food waste all of the time. It's sickening. It is. But it's like we as a people have to take more action, have to show up more, have to kind of like navigate this in bigger ways, because no one is coming to save us. And that is why being like of the people, by the people, for the people, going through more mutual aid routes, going through more like village routes of cultivating spaces where we're able to take care of one another, I think is the future, is really potent, because this like top down system isn't working, right? We're seeing it fall apart in all of these ways. And it's really hard because we're in the falling apart phase. So our job is to really find those solutions and implement them. There are also so many technologies that have been suppressed, especially water technologies, hydrogen technologies, the things that we can do with water, the things that we can do with solar, the things that we can do with energy at large are, I hope, going to be really coming online because they exist, right? Like, we're also seeing fungus, mushrooms that eat plastic. Like, there's so many solutions. So we have to figure out how to unblock those channels, because the innovation's there, the creativity is there. Humans naturally want to create and solve problems. We're a generative species. And we really have just been in these systems of oppression that are keeping us from those things, especially indigenous technologies, like beautiful, amazing, simple earth-based technologies that indigenous people all over the world have been using for millennia. Like, we need to go backward to go forward. We need to look to nature. We need to look to these systems. We need to look to these elder cultures, really. And there's an amazing book called Low Tech. I think it's Lotek. I'll link it below this. It's amazing. The woman who wrote it, her first name is Julia. I can't remember her last name, but I'll link it. And it really outlines all of these amazing solutions to all of these problems that we have that have existed on the earth for so long. So we really need to look to those voices. We need to look to those cultures that are still in preservation of their ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom. And we have to seek those out. And as white people, as Westerners, we really, really have to reorient ourselves to our own Indigenous roots, to those cultures that are still very much alive. And we need to protect them. We need to champion those voices. We need to really look at all of that. So that's another piece. But there's solutions to, I think, every problem. And so, how can we open the gateways for those solutions to come in? And that's going to take bravery, that's going to take intensity, that's going to take our own energy to move in those directions. Yeah. So the other thing I want to say, this is getting a little smaller and a little smaller and a little closer to home, is I am personally surrounded, and everywhere I look, I see amazing humans doing amazing things, not only for themselves and their families, but for their fellow humans. And I think that there are way more people doing good on this earth than doing not good, truly. And I think that when, like, everywhere I look, there are people building structures, systems, businesses, ideas, gardens, homes in amazing, generous, interesting, life affirming ways. And if that's not the view that you are seeing right now, I would highly recommend an algorithm reset in every way. Like, reset your algorithms on your social and begin engaging with content and people and accounts that are uplifting and that are inspiring, because my whole feed is just like incredible people doing incredible things. And even if I'm seeing some challenging stuff, negative things, it's like, okay, this is happening and this is what we're doing about it. And in my own life as well, like, even living in a very small town, it's full of people doing good things for each other. It's an agricultural hub of Colorado. So there's people growing food, there's people sharing food, there's people sharing ideas, there's people, and it's also a really interesting place because there are a lot of people on the left and the right there. And I'm encountering a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. And they also want you to think that even people who voted for someone who you don't agree with are like evil. And if you get to know anyone, there is so much good in the majority of people's hearts, truly. And that's not to excuse like the outliers and the people who are assholes, because those people also exist. But I just do not encounter them. I encounter one good person after another, especially if you're able to penetrate any outer layer of like, oh, this or anything, or interrogate them if they do say something that you're like, wait, what? Ask questions. Ask deeper questions, because when you ask deeper questions and are willing to get uncomfortable and have a conversation that doesn't stem from judgment, that stems from curiosity, you can like dismantle even the most like gruff person. There's a lot under the surface. And I think that we really have to come to our differences with a lot more questions. We do. I just don't see like screaming at people that they're wrong as a good way to change minds or open hearts. Asking questions and really questioning people about their own beliefs and assumptions, you're going to like end up getting into a place where that person maybe does have a shift in perspective, maybe does have their mind or heart open. And when you really go in, even if they say something inappropriate or concerning, there's there's something else there. And I really encourage people to continue with those tactics alongside any others, but I've just never seen someone change. I've never seen myself change through hatred or interrogation. You know, Gandhi, baby, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. We're not going to make progress by screaming at someone that they're a bigot. We're going to make progress asking them, oh, I completely disagree with that. What brought you to that idea? Like, why do you think that? Why would you think that this person is less than? Like, what is that? How could that be true? And get smart on your questions. Look up questions. Have a bunch of questions in your notes app. Like, there's no excuse to not be curious, I think. Because I think that just creates us into the same thing that we maybe don't like. And yeah, that's not to say like don't go out and speak against injustice, but when you're really face to face with something, I think curiosity is a much better leader. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, really seek. I just want to hone in on this. If you are not seeing beautiful things and people and experiences and people who are doing good, inspiring work in the world, seek them out because they're there. And the more you look for those things, the more they happen. The brain has confirmation bias. So when you're used to seeing a certain narrative and when your own orientation is in that groove and in that narrative, your brain is only going to see those things. So you have the power to consciously shift that. It might take a little time if you're in a groove of things are fucked up. You're going to see that over and over again. If you're in a groove of things are on the up and up, there's solutions, there are amazing people doing amazing things, you're going to see that. So get with it. Take some time to seek that out in real life, in the online sphere, because that's just all I'm seeing. And so I know it's possible. I know it's out there. And also really become that yourself, right? If you are a beacon of curiosity, of optimism, of solutions, of really showing up for your life, that is going to attract more of that energy into your life. Like attracts like it does. It is like a universal law. So it happens. And going into this a little deeper, as one person, unless it's really your mission, unless you're really here to be someone who transforms things on a big scale, which there are lots of those leaders, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama, Gandhi, unless you're here to be one of those people, which you might be, and that's incredible, and step into that work if that is you. And if you're just an individual person who isn't going to be one of those type of people in the world, your job is not to save humanity and rescue it from all of its problems. That's probably too much for you. That is probably not the path for you. You cannot save everyone. You cannot save everything. That will be a very overwhelming experience. And especially if you're in overwhelm and you're not even acting on like very simple things, that is going to be a not great path. What you can do is really hone in on your own heartbreak, what breaks your heart the most, and really hone in on your gifts. Who are you and why are you here? And that looks extremely different for all of us. And that doesn't create a hierarchy because we need every single person with their gifts fully online, especially right now. Like this is the time. You are here on the planet right now for a reason. You are. And maybe that reason is just having babies and raising them in the most loving, beautiful way, populating the earth with more warm-hearted, kind, amazing people who in their own ways will have amazing gifts to bring to the table and to heal humanity. Maybe you are here to plant gardens and work inside food systems and restructure something in that realm. Maybe you're here to share those things. Maybe you're here to be some sort of influencer, to be seen, to be in the public eye, to be able to share your message, to be able to speak clearly in a way that people understand. We need your gifts. We need them so much, no matter what they are, no matter how small or insignificant they feel. They're not insignificant. They're extremely powerful and they're extremely important and potent and necessary for this life and for this experience. So, really, in my mind, your job is to get very clear about your gifts and to protect them and to cultivate them and to bring them into the world, which is exactly why I do the work that I do. This is why I have Inner Prism. This is why I mentor people and support people in finding their gifts and bringing them online, because that's why all of us are here. And one of my ways of supporting the world is by creating containers and spaces where people can grow into themselves and begin to find those threads and bring them online, because we need you. Watching horrible things happen is also not required to change and transform the world. Being informed all the time is not a prereq for being an amazing person who creates good things, who moves mountains, who does good work in the world. Staring at our phones is not activism. And I think that we've tricked ourselves to thinking a lot about, okay, if I think about an idea, we think that we're doing it. And that's the same in our own self-development work. And I can get caught in this idea, this like cycle too of, okay, yes, I need to take care of myself. I need to eat well. I need to meditate. I need to exercise. And if I'm thinking about those things, some part of my brain thinks that I'm doing them. And so we really need to move into a doing space, like getting back into the body, getting back into the self in a big way to do things. And along those lines, maintaining our own frequency and maintaining a high frequency is really important. And I'm not talking about like that guy that lives in his van that you meet at the hot springs who's like, dude, you gotta like keep the vibes high and frequency high. Although he might have a really high, awesome frequency. What I mean by that and why it's important is like you need to cultivate your own energy system and own energy centers and become stronger from the inside out. It's really important because when you have a frequency that you're able to hold and maintain, that's how you're able to do your work in the world. Your energy, your well-being is your most valuable asset and resource, right? When we're sick, we can't do anything. You know, when you like get a cold or the flu and then you get better and you have energy again, the relief of being well is so overwhelming, and you realize you can't show up to your life and your work if your frequency and your being is low. You just can't. So, how are you maintaining your frequency? Nervous system work. There's so many different ways of doing this. And that's why knowing thyself is so insanely important, because you need to understand what dips your frequency, what bottoms you out, what exhausts you, and how do you care for yourself so that you can show up as your best self, so that you can be the leader in whatever space you're in, even if it's just in your own family, even if it's just leading yourself. You need energy to do that. It's so important. So how are you doing that? Are you doing breath work, emotional clearing, nervous system work? There's so many resources. There's so many YouTube videos. There's so much that's free. There's no excuse not to do that, even if you only have a little bit of time. So just like really maintaining that frequency, creating strength in yourself, like body, mind, soul, spirit. We need your strength right now. Because the other thing is that I think that this movie we're watching play out is just getting started. I think it's going to get a lot wilder. It's going to get more intense, I think, before it gets better. And we really need to buckle up for this ride. And the way you buckle up is simple things. Daily maintenance of your systems, of your body, of your mind, of your heart, of your spirit. Giving yourselves breaks, giving yourselves baths, breath work, like the things that we already know, whatever your things are. And if you haven't found those things, research, experiment, try different stuff. Because if you are upset and dysregulated and hopeless and heartbroken and overwhelmed, that is not serving the people of this earth. That is only serving the systems that are keeping the people down and repressed and not alive and awake. Our potential as human beings is also extremely untapped. I'm convinced of this. I hope that we're going to just see so much change and so much come online in the coming years of what it even is to be a person, because I don't think we know. And I think our capacity is so beyond what we think it is. And so beginning to grow that and change that and hold that in new ways is going to be vital. And also, what you are the frequency of is what you're going to be attracting into your life. You cannot see other frequencies that you're not on. You can't. You won't see that confirmation. You won't see the good news. You won't see that energy. And do I ultimately know that we're going into a good place? No, I don't know what's happening. I have no idea. I'm getting a lot of downloads. I'm being woken up in the night with information pouring into me, pouring into myself. I'm having all of these very intense psychic experiences. And so part of it is because of that. Part of it is because I am surrounded by people doing amazing things. But I think that we have to oscillate more easily between this like really big scope of humanity and on this path. And, we've been through crazy stuff before. Humanity has been through a lot. Like the Holocaust is a really easy example to go to of like a very intense, horrible time to be alive, where so many atrocities were committed, where humanity was really like in a dark zone. And yet there are so many beacons of light and that came out of that, and a reorganization of the world came out of that. And not to say that that should have happened, because that's not like the framework I'm using, but we have to just understand that this is a really big scope, and we are just these little drops in this bucket, in this ocean, in this experience. And the more that we really also focus in on our own lives, and not in a selfish way, but really cultivate the self in a big way in service of the whole. Ultimately, I think that that's one of the only things that we can do. Cultivate the self, really, on a deep, deep level, and with a really open, big heart, and not because you are just like in your own lane and in your own tunnel vision. But if you have energy and power and you're well resourced, and then you're going out into the world, You're not being influenced by all of the crazy that's happening. You're looking around, you're able to be discerning, and you're able to actually help people. You're actually able to move the needle of humanity toward a brighter, better future for all. Because if you're bottomed out, you're overwhelmed, you're feeling hopeless, yeah, sure. If that's the moment you're in, there's moments for all of us to feel that and be in that. And it's not about bypassing those moments. But you don't want to stay in that state. That doesn't serve you or anyone else. You want to cultivate joy and happiness and freedom and all of that on the inside first. It's an inside job in order for it to be an external gift and prerogative. And yeah, I think like look for the evidence, cultivate the self, and be diligent in this. Like, I feel like I'm at a really big turning point where I've really stopped asking this question of like, why me? Why haven't I gotten to XYZ? Why haven't, like, that's such a strain of victim mentality. And we're all sort of like obsessed with being victims together in this culture. And it's really boring ultimately. And it gets you nowhere. If your life is challenging right now, like, okay, put in the work, like, show up to it, be with what is, because your life is the path. The thing that is happening right in front of you is the next step. You're not going to be able to bypass that step and get on to the next thing. You have to go through the step. You have to go through the challenge. There's no like over, around, and through, except by developing your own over, around, and through to move through whatever the block is, whatever the thing is, whatever the challenge is. And yeah, maybe I'll make a list or something of ways to easily cultivate optimism, or like easily, I don't know. I don't know that it's easy, but I think that because I'm just naturally geared toward that right now, it is important for me to share this, even if it just supports one person in feeling a little bit more optimistic and a little bit better about themselves and the world and the future, and just holding hope. The last thing I'll say is that there's so many people holding a negative doomsday frequency, and we just don't, like, in what way does that serve you? Does holding that view and holding that frequency inspire you to change the world? Does that inspire you to feel good? You feeling good isn't a crime, even as the world is insane. I'm also going to publish a private newsletter that I put out because it also touches on a lot of this. Like, your job is to cultivate the self so much that you're able to be on a burning planet and not lose your center, so that you can help more and more people find theirs. Like, you want to be you want to be the band playing on the Titanic. Like, if the ship is going down, how are you going down? With what energy are you going down? And I don't think we're going down, but if we were, just like play your music as best and beautifully as you can, so that we can listen to that as the world's on fire, because that is going to soothe hearts, soothe minds, soothe souls. That is going to be a balm for these times that we all need. And the more people that are holding some element of a positive frequency, the better we're all going to feel. And even just imagine if everyone just decided that we're going to a good place. What if the whole world was suddenly woke up and we were like, oh my gosh, amazing things are happening. We're going to a great place. We're like on track. This is good. That would be way more likely of creating that outcome than if we were all just like, it's all fucked. We're going to hell. It's all going to shit. Right? Like we get to stimulate outcomes by living them, by first believing them, or at least cultivating some remnant of them. So, yeah, I really like that. I really think like that would be such a cool thing if every person on earth woke up just naturally optimistic about where we were going, because they would live out that optimism. They would create that optimism. So if you're not feeling that optimism right now, I think you have to almost brainwash yourself into being optimistic. And don't get it twisted. It's not about like ignoring what's happening. It's about creating new outcomes with what currently is. So, yeah, I am really optimistic. I'm really excited. I think we're going to good places, but seek them out, find them, cultivate them. It also is a personal responsibility. Like, we're not going to be saved. You are here in part to save yourself and to save others in the process of saving yourself, and support others so that they can save themselves, because that's the only way. You have to just show people what is possible and stand in that unwaveringly. Even if you're wavering, waver, but continue to stand in the light, and to bring the light and share the light and shed the light and illuminate all of the dark spots that are honestly going down and having their last little screaming battle. Because humanity is in it, we have to wake up. We have to. And I think we are. So I hope this is helpful, and share resources, share thoughts, share things that are optimistic. Maybe if everyone can just comment on this, like one beautiful thing they saw, one surprising optimistic thing, a list of optimistic things, like whatever the resources are, I would love if people can just share them below this so that we can make this ball of optimism grow. Like, things grow when we give them our attention and energy and momentum. These are universal laws. So, anyway, okay, thanks for being here. I'm done.